Okay, so these are my rebuttal points to Mr. Wickert's physician-assisted suicide video. I'd like to start by talking about his point on about how 2,000 years ago they were doing physician-assisted suicides. Well, 2,000 years ago they also had nearly no medical intel besides herbal therapy and different things like that, and they had no ways to adequately help ease the dying process. I'm sure that dying back then was much desired with no analgesic relief and things like that. So I'd like to start by saying that I think the comparison of now and 2,000 years ago is a far cry of something comparable. I'd also like to go with talk about his comparison to the suicide pills that they gave soldiers and the remedies they gave even soldiers back then. Whenever you're talking about someone behind enemy lines who sees their buddy get chopped into pieces one day and knows he's next if he doesn't talk, if he is loyal enough to not want to spill any beans and also not want to die that death, and he takes a pill to commit suicide, I still don't agree with it because I'm a Christian, but I would not put that in the same boat as physician-assisted suicide. Those are two totally different things, and somebody in the physician-assisted suicide case, although they may be looking at a great amount of pain, I don't think that they're looking at the same process of enduring that kind of a death. Particularly not mentally as well, of the mental strain that you would go through to be killed that way. And as far as he said that you had the right to choose when you die and how you die, I agree to a certain extent of wanting to have a justified death and or a natural death or a dignified death, but I don't think I think our society we're not allowed to kill each other just whenever we want to and for any reason, and we have laws and statutes in place for all kinds of things. I don't think that everyone necessarily should be able to stand on the side of the street and pull the trigger on their head whenever they want to, which is we're talking about physician-assisted suicide, but in general he was categorizing suicide as just a free right to do whenever and wherever you want to. And although you can't prosecute someone who's killed themselves, I don't think that morally and ethically it's a good decision and should be supported. So therein lies that I think physician-assisted suicide, although probably on the outskirts of suicide, is still within it, so I don't support it. I agree that it's a gray area on the Catholic standing of they support the withdrawing of medical care, and they support giving doses of pain meds to help ease the passing, but not supporting physician-assisted suicide. However, pain medicine is still assisting the natural process of dying, and it's not legitimately giving them a fatal dose and killing them. And I'd like to reiterate from my debate that the slippery slope is, and this is also going to go along with his stance of saying that the Netherlands is ahead of us and we're quote-unquote behind in the ball game in the U.S. Well, what kind of ball game are we trying to get into? Because within a 30-year span, I don't have the exact dates, but somewhere in the 1950s to, I think it was 1983, not 100%, they had went from not supporting physician-assisted suicide to having a gray area of government where they weren't in support of it, but they weren't prosecuting physicians for supporting it. Then they went to full support of physician-assisted suicide with death parameters in place of, painful, inevitable death. And then they went to things that were such as long-standing low back pain and stuff to that nature, of where they could further the physician-assisted suicide parameters. And now they are currently in a process where they are allowing children I think the lowest age is 12 to, with the agreeance of their family members, take their own life. And I do not support that. I don't don't want to see that come to the U.S., and I would rather be behind in that ball game. Let's see here. And once again, where are we going on the diseases once we get that slippery slope? Is it ALS, quadriplegia, disorders of cancer that are going to cause chronic pain for the duration until death, or are we going to try to widen it to low back pain, to MS, to certain things like that, where the pain necessarily isn't unendurable now, but it's the thought of unendurable pain? That's my question, is how far are we going to go? And they're definitely in other countries. Obviously, Netherlands isn't the only one. There has been a slippery slope that has begun and gotten into, I'm sure, way further aspects of the physician-assisted suicide than they had initially thought whenever they were just trying to take care of that one person who was in agony. And regarding the American Medical Society in the 1990s, supporting withdrawing meds and life support of someone who is in a coma, an extended coma, and a potential coma that they believe the patient will never come out of. He said that this was gaining ground and support of physician-assisted suicide, but nowhere in that statement did I hear that this was anything like physician-assisted suicide, because supporting coming off of meds and life support is basically what we now call DNR, or an advanced directive, and that is simply choosing to not sustain life artificially. So that's not physician-assisted suicide. That's not gray. Whenever a physician says, I'm going to let this person die naturally, that physician is not saying I'm going to assist them in suicide. That's two completely different things. It's not a gray area. So I don't agree with that statement. And lastly, the last point that I'd like to touch on before concluding is that Mr. Wickert said, I disagree, or he said that certain states have gone so far as to even support financially, and I can't remember which all states he said were doing this where tax dollars were used, but I think that even if a state, if I live in Illinois, which I do, decided to support physician-assisted suicide, unless I wanted to move, I'd have to go with that, but I probably would move if they told me that my taxpayer dollars were going to support those things, because it's not my belief that it should be done, and it's probably not my neighbors down the road, and it may be the other direction. My neighbor does support it. We all have our rights to believe what we want to believe, but forcing us to pay for things that we don't believe in, I don't think that should be done, and I would move out of this state if they began that process, and if I caught wind of it. So, and I mean, my question to him would be, our government does what they want, I'm sure, and we have to comply if that's where we want to live. Well, my statement would be I wouldn't live in this state, and also I would ask, would you be also okay if you knew taxpayer dollars were also being dumped into anti-physician suicide associations, or propaganda in support of abolishing physician-assisted suicide? I would think somebody in favor of physician-assisted suicide would not want their money going towards anti-physician-assisted suicide. So there's two sides of the fence there, and I don't think that that the taxpayers' dollars being put towards that is very. I wouldn't support it. I would be far left on that, and not support it. And I don't. And in the same regard, I wouldn't want to press something upon someone else, even if they believe different than me. I would not try to force them to support it financially or any other way. So these are my points on the rebuttal against physician-assisted suicide, and this was very beneficial to my learning, and I enjoyed working with Mr. Wickert. And thank you for your time.